and Joey Logano from the fall race. And,
Yeah.
And what could come back there on Sunday. So, it'll be interesting to see. You talk to some drivers and they say, well, fall race with a spot in the championship 4 on the line is a lot different than the spring race.
Right.
I asked Joey Logano that, and he said, there's still a trophy on the line.
That's true. That's true.
When there's a trophy and a grandfather clock, and potentially for a driver, if it is a Bowyer or somebody who hasn't had a win this year and needs to punch their ticket, you can expect them to use the bumper if they need to.
That's right. We're talking to Bob Pockr at Bob Pockr on Twitter, at NASCAR on Fox as well. And, of course, remember, they're getting ready for Martinsville Speedway. Okay, Bob, we're going to hash into it. Kyle Busch and Richard Petty, 200 wins in the Cup Series for Petty, 200 wins in NASCAR Touring in the 3 National Series for Kyle Busch. What is your thoughts on it, and why is it such a controversial world in NASCAR now?
Well, it's controversial because Richard Petty's record was 200 wins, right? If he had 205, we'd just be like, oh, cool, Kyle Busch got 200 across all 3 series. But, with Richard's record of 200 Cup wins, it's natural to compare, and obviously it's very difficult to compare. You're talking about such a different era, such different fields. I think they both. I think Kyle Busch would be competitive with Richard Petty, when Richard Petty was at the height of his career, and I think Richard Petty would be competitive with Kyle Busch.
Gotcha.
At the height of Kyle Busch's career, I think it's a great accomplishment. Obviously, rules change. If the rules hadn't changed, Kyle would have been at 200 wins earlier. But now that they have the limits on Cup drivers in Xfinity and Truck, he can't race as much, and it'll probably prevent anybody from hitting 200. Probably in the future, potentially, forever. So
basically,
Kyle Busch is a great talent,
right?
And I think but try and compare the two. I think there's some weeks where it's harder for Kyle to win than it was for Richard to win,
right?
And there may have been some weeks where it was harder for Richard to win than Kyle to win.
Okay, but here's my take on it, though, Bob. When Richard Petty, and I said this at the beginning of the show when I was talking with Eddie Massey, when Richard Petty was running the Cup Series and he was winning these wins in the Cup Series, there were times where he could race 2 or 3 times in a day. He could run 10 times in a week. And they counted because they were NASCAR Cup Series events. Now, obviously, NASCAR has a stricter structure now with, you go to place to place to place weekend after weekend, and Kyle can only go to certain places and win like he's been doing. But back then in the day, you could go to Metrolina and run a Cup race and win, and Petty done that. You could go to the Raleigh Fairgrounds Speedway, which, by the way, quick statistic, 1970, Raleigh Fairgrounds Speedway, Richard Petty was the final winner at that track in Raleigh, North Carolina. You can go to Greenville Pickens or Myrtle Beach or Occoneechee Speedway or any of these historic tracks are not even around anymore, and Petty won them. It just wasn't Daytona or Darlington or Charlotte, Bob. It was... there was opportunities where he could win multiple times, sometimes more in the same day. Does that count?
It's just such a different time and such a different. How do you compare point scores in the NBA from the 2-point era to the 3-point era?
Right.
There's no. It's very difficult. So. As I said, I think there were probably some weekends where it was very difficult for Richard to win, and he won, and there were some weekends where it was probably fairly easy for him to win, and he won, and I would think you could say the same about Kyle Busch. And when I say easy, I mean easier.
Right.
I don't think any win is easy, but, certainly if you have the car and
absolutely.
the crew chief,
yeah.
and, you put yourself in position, you can win. You win more races, and I think both Petty had that, and I think Kyle has had that across all 3 series.
Absolutely. We're talking to Bob Pockr here. Coming up at the top of the hour, we're going to talk to Mike Ray, downtown Michael Brown, big winner in the Carolina Clash and Sika Crate Late Models at Lancaster, South Carolina. We'll talk to him also here on Finish Line. Of course, you can follow Bob Pockr on Twitter at Bob Pockr. Bob, again, we were talking so much about this scenario with Petty and Bush, and I've seen some comments from Richard Petty on his concepts of what he thought of Kyle and his accomplishments and vice versa. Kyle, for the most part, he's kind of being quiet about it. I mean, he's like, man, this is something special to me. This is something, that I've never, ever done before. I don't think nobody else will ever be able to do again, as you just reiterated on, Bob. But, why is there so much, why are people not giving the Kyle Busch the love that I think he should get? Because, like you said, this is 200 and 200 in totally different eras.
Well, I mean, I think they don't like Kyle. Either they don't like his attitude, or they don't like the fact that he's run, and I don't want to say even just won so many Xfinity truck races, but dominated so many of them.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. If it was Dale Jr., if it was Dale Jr. that did this, do you think everybody would have a total opposite opinion of what if Dale Jr. did what Kyle Busch has done?
Some would, but I would say if he did it the way Kyle has done it in Xfinity and trucks, in some instances where it's, you lead virtually all the laps,
right?
You win by 4, 5, 6 seconds. I think people would start saying, why do you keep doing this? I think there's a huge difference between the Kyle Busch win an Xfinity at Phoenix,
right,
versus let's say one of his versus a truck win. If he has to continue to battle and be strong on restarts and everything, then I think people would be a little bit more accepting. But nobody wants to see anybody go and lead 180 of 200 laps and win by 5 seconds.
But if it was Dale Senior doing it back in the day, people loved it. I mean, is it because of the personality? Is it because of the driver? That's why they just like it.
A little bit that for the most part, Dale was doing it with his team, and granted, by the end, his team was a Cup team too, but. I think when I still think Kyle probably gets more respect when he wins a truck race sometimes in his own equipment than he does if he wins an Xfinity race in JGR equipment. So I think it all depends. People wouldn't mind Dale Jr. if he did it in Junior Motorsports equipment as much as they would if he had done it in, let's say, if Hendrick had a team in Hendrick equipment.
Dennis Bolt says, and I quote, the fans would never allow Junior to enjoy a 200-win accomplishment. So, okay, Dennis, there you go. Again, we're talking to Bob Pockr. It's got about 5-6 minutes left to go with him. Mike Ray coming up on the way from his Motorsports Podcast review show as well. We'll get his thoughts on that, get ready for Martinsville. And, of course, Bob, again, we can hash on this forever. But, again, someone made the comment in the chat box this morning in regards to Dick Trickle. Do you think Dick Trickle should be in the running of being acknowledged for 1,200 wins in his career? And is that anywhere close to what Richard Petty has done? I mean.
Yeah, well, I think you'd have to verify those numbers, right? I mean, I don't. Does anybody really know how many wins Dick Trickle had? I mean, is there a list anywhere?
I'll make sure. I'll Google search it. I'll do my own recon.
I don't. I mean, I don't. I think that's. Again, you look and say, well, how big were the fields, and what and who it was against. I mean, that's what you're going to be. That's the way you're going to be judged by, and I mean, certainly he should be acknowledged for it. But I would say that people, there's also a lot of short track people, who win in their local areas who never, venture out for one reason or another. Who are champions. Probably have enough trophies to fill a trophy case and enough rings to put on all their fingers. But who deserve some type of acknowledgement. But I think when you do it on the national. Whenever you do anything on the national level, it's gonna get a little bit more certainly going to get a little bit more buzz and a little more focus.
Well, we're gonna drop this subject about Kyle Busch and Richard Petty. I'll let you go on this note, but the cars of today, the new tapered spacer, taking the restrictor plates off the cars. We're going to see that at Talladega coming up in a few weeks for the Geico 500, and of course, Bob, what is your thoughts of the new cars, the new program, the new aero package that the NASCAR series has provided? We've seen some snoozer races. I'm not saying that we haven't, but for the most part, we've also seen some pretty exciting races too.
I mean, I can't say that we've seen the best races at any of these tracks, and we haven't seen the worst races at any of these tracks.
Right.
I say the racing, truthfully, and granted, I'm watching a lot on monitors and stuff because when I'm staged in the media center during the race, but it doesn't look a ton different, I think NASCAR continues to evaluate it, and I wouldn't expect any changes maybe in April, but come May or June, I would think NASCAR, if they're not seeing what they want, we'll try and make tweaks. I think they want more passing for the lead, and look, they don't want drivers to be stuck in a full track position game, and it appears at times that only a guy like Kyle Busch could really make the moves necessary.
Absolutely.
So, I think they're still trying to find that balance. And, certainly intriguing. Certainly people are watching. But, again, if you're a fan of a driver, you want your driver, if they have a better car, to have the ability to drive through the field, having to work for it, but not have it be impossible.
Right.
And you want to see them doing it and make you think, gosh, it's the driver and the crew chief who are making it happen, and not just the car. So I think NASCAR still has a challenge, but they're making attempts, and so far, you would. In some ways, you give it an incomplete. In other ways, you would say, it's pretty similar to last year.
Bob Pockr is about to wrap things up with him here in a few moments. Bob, the TV ratings, the radio ratings, they're down for NASCAR races this year. Why do you feel like it's that way? Is it the product? Is it because people are not giving this new race package on these cars a chance? Is it because they think it's the same days of old? Why? What can we do to bump up the numbers to get more interest out there on the sport?
Well, I mean, I think first off, the ratings at least the overnights have been up the last few weeks. So I think people are intrigued by the new package, and maybe engaged by some of the potential rivalries going on and everything. So
Gotcha.
I think it's a matter of creating passion for the drivers who are out there currently, and NASCAR certainly has lost a lot of their big names, that maybe brought in a casual fan, and NASCAR has the challenge of trying to find a way to get people to care about the stars of today and the stars of tomorrow. And, that challenge is increased by, probably the decrease a little bit in car culture, and, and trying to, get people to rally behind manufacturers, and also trying to get people to rally behind drivers who didn't necessarily race locally for 3, 4, 5, 6 years as they used to, and developed a fan base.
What is your thoughts of the quote that Tony Stewart said about NASCAR drivers of this day and age yesterday? What did you think of that?
I mean, he's been saying that for a while. I didn't think it was anything new. Tony's frustrated because he sees somebody who comes out of high school and seems to be able to race with Tony Stewart, in his final years of Cup racing, and Tony couldn't use all his years of experience to his advantage. Right. So I think that to me, that's where it comes from. If I've been racing for 20 years and I have knowledge of cars and I have knowledge of how things, of how to get around a track better than somebody else, but the rules package and the way the cars are set up don't allow me to use those talents
right,
then I'd be frustrated too.
Absolutely. Got a question coming in for you, Dennis. Bold has got a question for you, Bob. Do you feel like the constant changes create a situation where the teams never